This happened a few months ago. I was 34 and needed a break. My job as a software engineer was stressful, so I thought a cabin in the woods would help me unwind. I found one deep in the trees, surrounded by tall pines and a bubbling creek. It looked perfect. The first hours were nice. I set up the cabin and made a fire. I sat in front of the flames, listening to the forest. It felt peaceful. But when night fell, everything changed. I started hearing soft thumps inside the cabin. At first, I told myself it was the cabin settling or maybe a deer against the wall. I tried not to worry, but something felt off. As the night went on, the thumping grew louder. It turned into scratching sounds. I couldn't figure out what it was. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, or a forest animal. My heart raced, but I stayed put, convincing myself I was just tired. The next day, things got stranger. I noticed odd symbols carved into the wooden walls. They felt wrong. I traced my fingers over them, and my skin crawled with unease. I stepped outside for fresh air, hoping to feel better. That's when I saw footprints in the dirt. They were not mine. They led toward the trees. I thought maybe it was other campers. As night approached again, I was on edge. I kept glancing out the window, half expecting a person to be standing there. I thought I saw shadows moving between the trees, but when I looked again, nothing was there. I started second-guessing myself, thinking it was just the moonlight. I didn't sleep much. My heart thudded in my ears. It felt like I was being watched. By the third night, I was sure something was out there. I tried to stay calm, sitting by the fire and distracting myself. Then, I heard a whisper. It felt like it was right outside the window. I couldn't make out the words. The sound sent shivers down my back. I jumped up and ran to the window, but I saw nothing but darkness. I felt my heart racing. I was convinced something was out there. I wanted to leave. My instincts told me to run. But something kept me inside, frozen. That's when I saw it. A figure stood just beyond the tree line, barely visible in the shadows, staring right at me. I blinked, and in an instant, it was gone. I felt cold dread wash over me. I didn't know what to do. Even now, I think about that cabin often. I wonder if I really escaped. I still feel those eyes on me, watching from the trees. And I can't shake the feeling that something followed me home. Someday, I'll have to go back and face whatever is waiting there. The following weeks after I returned from the cabin were strange. I tried to resume my routine, but normalcy felt distant. At night, I would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling. I could almost hear the whispers, echoing in my mind, soft and taunting. Each time I closed my eyes, the dark shape from the trees loomed in my thoughts. One evening, desperation pushed me to visit a local cafe for a change of scenery. I needed to escape the heaviness of my apartment. As I sipped my coffee, I overheard two women at a nearby table talking about a strange cabin in the woods. My heart skipped. They mentioned the symbols. They were not just any symbols. They were connected to local folklore, whispers of the forest that locals avoided. I leaned in closer. My curiosity outweighed my fear. They spoke of the legends surrounding the area, the dark spirits that roamed, lost souls said to be trapped because of a ritual gone wrong. My pulse quickened. The cabin I rented, the symbols I touched, it all seemed interconnected. Unable to contain myself, I politely interrupted. "Excuse me, were you talking about the cabin near Pikes Creek?" They looked at me, surprise mixed with concern. "Yes," one of them said softly. "Have you been there?" "I have. I hesitated, wondering how to express what I had experienced. I heard things. I saw something in the trees. Their faces paled. "You shouldn't have gone alone. It's not safe." "Why? What do you mean?" My stomach twisted. The other woman leaned in. "That cabin is known for attracting something. People have gone missing. They say if you disturb the symbols, it awakens it." She paused. "You should stay away. Seriously." I left the cafe with a growing dread. The encounter kept replaying in my mind. The whispers, the figure, the symbols haunted me. What else had I disturbed? Was it really possible that something had followed me home? That night, I couldn't shake the fear. I sat in my living room trying to distract myself with TV. I picked at my food, anxiety gnawing at my stomach. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed my front door slowly creaking open. I froze, heart racing. I lived alone. No one should be there. "Hello?" I called, my voice shaky. The door swung wider. I could see only darkness beyond the threshold. I tiptoed closer, dread pooling in my gut. The wind picked up, brushing past me as I pushed the door shut. My breath quickened. I locked the deadbolt, shivering at the sudden chill in the air. Then, I heard it. A soft scratching sound coming from the wooden door I had just secured. The hairs on my arms stood straight. I stepped back, my heart throbbing. That's when I remembered the footprints. They weren't just leading to the woods, they were leading to me. I needed answers. But I also knew I needed to go back to that cabin. I had disturbed something, and it was not done with me yet. I had no choice. It was time to face whatever was waiting. I left my apartment early the next morning, the sun barely peeking above the horizon. My stomach churned with anticipation. I couldn't ignore the pull toward the cabin. I drove in silence, each mile bringing back flashes of the whispers in that looming figure. Was I making a mistake? When I arrived, the cabin looked almost the same as I remembered. The trees around it towered like sentinels, their gnarled branches swaying slightly in the breeze. I stepped out of the car, feeling a shiver run down my spine. I forced myself to approach the door, but hesitated. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The familiar musty smell hit me, an unsettling reminder of the last time I was here. I stepped inside, feeling the weight of the silence. Nothing but the creaking of the old wood welcomed me. Instead of searching for answers right away, I walked around slowly, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light. The symbols were still carved into the walls, but one looked different. I squinted, leaning closer. It seemed deeper, as if someone had tried to erase it but failed. A chill ran through me, and I wondered if I was just paranoid. But it felt wrong. I didn't like it. Feeling urgency rising, I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures of the symbols. Maybe they'd help me find out what was going on. Then, I heard it. A rustling from outside, followed by a low growl. I dropped my phone, the light spilling across the floor. Panic surged through me. I hurried to the window and peeked through the curtain. There was nothing there, just the trees, shifting restlessly in the wind. I stepped back, heart racing, trying to calm myself. I needed to refocus. If I could figure out what had awakened, maybe I could put it back to rest. I turned back to the symbols, pulling up information on my phone. As the search results loaded, the unsettling growl rumbled again, this time closer. I swallowed hard. Should I stay? I felt trapped between my need for answers and the instinct to run. I decided to risk it and began jotting down notes. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, but I pushed it aside. Suddenly, a large shadow flickered past the window. I froze, my heart hammering. I rushed to the window again, now feeling the urge to bolt. Something was out there. That's when I saw it. A figure, impossibly dark, slithered between the trees. It was tall and twisted, impossibly wrong. I could barely breathe. My fear turned into sheer terror. It stopped, turning its head slowly toward the cabin. It knew I was here. I stumbled back from the window, frantically searching for a way to escape, but it was too late. The scratching noise that haunted me at home echoed in the cabin, louder and more insistent. I needed to leave, but I couldn't take my eyes off the figure. That's when the growling returned, now a chorus of whispers mixing with it. And then everything went dark. I couldn't see anymore. The whispers grew louder, filling my head. "You disturbed us," they hissed. "Now you must pay." A surge of panic shot through me, and I stumbled toward the door, my heart racing. I clawed at the doorknob, feeling the pulse of dark energy behind me. The whispers were closing in, but just before I could escape, I heard a familiar voice calling my name. It was my own voice, echoing from the shadows. "You should not have come back." Just before I burst into the sunlight, the last whisper stuck in my mind. This is only the beginning. Sunlight hit my face, pulling me from the darkness of the cabin. I stumbled outside, breathing hard. The woods felt too quiet now, almost too calm after the chaos inside. I took a step away from the door, unsure of what I should do next. Should I run? A quick glance at the trees made me hesitate. Their branches seemed to tremble, shadows flickering at the edges of my vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still being watched. I turned back to the cabin, trying to convince myself that leaving would be the best choice. But something inside urged me to uncover the truth about what had just happened. Taking a cautious step back, I scanned the surroundings. That large figure, the shadow in the woods, had vanished, but I could still feel its presence lingering. Shaking off the dread, I returned to the cabin. A part of me knew I needed to confront whatever was happening here. I stepped inside, feeling the musty air wrap around me. Everything was exactly how I'd left it, except something was off. The faint scratches that had echoed earlier seemed to reverberate even now. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I had to confirm if the symbols held any meaning. I pulled out my phone again, but before I could start taking notes, I heard it. A soft tapping sound echoed from deeper within the cabin. My heart sank. I held my breath, straining to hear. It was rhythmic, persistent, definitely a noise, but not one that should belong here. With trembling hands, I moved toward the source, my phone's flashlight illuminating the hallway. As I approached an old door at the end, the tapping stopped suddenly. I swallowed hard, fighting against the fight-or-flight instinct taking over. "Hello," I called, my voice shaking. Silence answered. I reached for the doorknob, my fingers trembling. Just as I turned it, that terrible growl erupted again, breaking the stillness and sending a jolt of fear through my body. It was within the room. Something was in there with me. I yanked the door open, expecting a monster, but what I found was worse. The room was empty, yet the walls were covered in more symbols, deeper and more sprawling than I remembered. They pulsated faintly, like they were alive. As I stepped inside, a figure appeared at the edge of my vision, darting into the corner. I spun around, but it was gone. My breath quickened, and I felt a suffocating heat building in my chest. Then, the whispers returned, this time more distinct. "Find us," they called. "We wait." The urgency in their tone increased, and the shadows shifted as if in response to my fear. I backed out of the room, the door creaking ominously behind me. I needed to leave, but the whispers wrapped around me like a thick fog, pulling me back toward the symbols. I turned to run, my instinct screaming that I was being hunted. But as I stepped out of the room, I noticed something. A small wooden box lay against the wall, almost hidden beneath the dust. I hesitated, curiosity overpowering my fear. I knelt down, my heart racing as I reached for it. What secrets might it hold? Before I could open it, the growling intensified, a warning echoing through the cabin. I felt the walls close in around me, and then a low voice whispered, "You cannot escape." That's when the forest outside darkened, as if something was blocking the sun. I felt my breath hitch. I had awakened something primal, and now it was coming for me. I froze, my hand hovering over the box. The growling morphed into a deep rumble, echoing through the cabin. Fear coursed through my veins. With every instinct screaming at me to flee, I snatched the box and sprinted back to the main room. I could hear it, the rustling in the shadows, the whisper of something moving closer. I had no time to waste. I flung the box onto a dusty table, my heart pounding as I fumbled with the latch. My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid, and the hinges squeaked in protest. Inside, I found a collection of old photographs, their edges frayed. I spread them out, my hands shaking. The faces were familiar, almost too familiar. People I'd never seen in person stared back at me, expressions ranging from joy to despair. Then I noticed something else. An object lay at the bottom of the box. I reached deeper, pulling out a small, ornate key. Intricate engravings covered its surface, twisting and curling like the symbols on the walls. A sense of urgency gripped me. Where did it fit? Suddenly, the lights flickered. Shadows danced across the walls, and that terrible growl returned, this time closer than before. I felt the urge to bolt, but curiosity had me frozen in place. I glanced at the photos, desperate to find a clue. As I examined a particularly dark image, a chill ran down my spine. The background looked familiar, the same symbols etched into the walls, but what caught my breath was the figure in the foreground. A woman, standing tall, with hauntingly familiar features. I squinted, trying to reconcile the face I was seeing with the fear soaking my senses. "Who are you?" I whispered, eyes darting around the room, half expecting an answer. The growling turned into a low, mocking laugh, reverberating through the cabin. I clutched the key tightly, realizing it wasn't just an object. It was a potential way to understand what I had stumbled into. Maybe it would open a door, not just within the cabin, but also to the horrifying reality surrounding me. Every instinct told me to leave, to run back into the forest and escape whatever had awakened here. But a stronger impulse pushed me to confront it. I couldn't let fear dictate my actions. I needed answers, and this key might be the only way to get them. I looked toward the back room, where the whispers beckoned, where the growling threatened. With a deep breath, I moved toward the door of the dark room once more, clutching the key tightly. The shadows flickered and shifted as I stepped closer. That's when I heard it, a loud crash outside. The sound shattered the tense silence, pulling my attention away from the door. Something was out there in the woods, something large and menacing. It called to me with the same urgency as the whispers. I hesitated, caught between the unknown of the cabin and whatever lay beyond. But the whispers grew louder, as if enticing me to take that final step, to embrace whatever awaited. Then I heard it again. "Find us." The voice sank deep into my bones, and just like that, I knew. Whatever was out there was linked to me, to the figures in the photographs. I had to uncover the truth. But the moment I turned back, the door slammed shut behind me. The air felt heavy, almost electric, as I stared at the closed door. Panic bubbled up inside me, shifting my thoughts into overdrive. Somehow, I knew something was coming. A confrontation was inevitable. I pressed my ear against the wood. The whispers filled the room, wrapping around me like a fog. "Find us," they called, coaxing me to join something lurking just beyond my reach. I wanted to scream, to call for help, but my voice caught in my throat. I felt like I was drowning in that moment. Then the growl pulsated through the cabin again, sharper and angrier. It was right behind me, inches away. My heart raced, urging my legs to move. But I stood frozen, like prey before a predator. It felt as if my terror had awakened something restless, something waiting for me to trip. "Please," I whispered to the shadowy room, daring to take a step back. "I just want to understand." The tension shifted, and just for an instant, the growl faded into a low hum. I took that moment to wrench the latch and push the door open. No turning back now. I stepped inside, shaken by the musty odor and dim light. A small weight inside my pocket reminded me of the key. It was still mine, and it felt warm against my skin. I had to find where it belonged. My eyes flickered to the corners of the room, searching for anything that might hint at a lock or a secret. A massive bookshelf lined one wall, filled with dusty tomes. The titles were faded, their spines cracked. I approached, brushing my fingers across the surfaces, feeling the years of neglect. Then, something caught my eye. A book slightly ajar, its page marked with strange symbols identical to those in the photographs. I opened the book carefully, revealing a series of drawings that sent shivers down my spine. They depicted scenes from the photographs, but they told a different story. One of loss, of longing. I flipped through the pages, searching for a clue, when the floor creaked unnaturally beneath me. A shadow flickered past the doorway. My heart lurched. I turned, but nothing was there. I shook it off, convincing myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But the whispers began again, louder and more insistent. "Find us." I felt an uncontrollable urge to follow them, to push deeper into the unknown. My hands gripped the edges of the book as an invisible string pulled me towards the back of the room. That's when I noticed a small, peculiar door set against the wall. It was covered in the same carvings as the key. Without thinking, I thrust the key into the lock. My breath caught in my chest. I twisted it, and the door clicked open with a grating noise that sent a chill through me. The warm light from the cabin flickered out, and a darkness enveloped the space beyond. I hesitated in the threshold, but the whispers surged, almost rushing me forward. "You must find us." They were louder, demanding. That's when everything fell silent. The oppressive quiet settled over me like a shroud. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was in that darkness, waiting. There was no turning back now. With a deep breath, I stepped through the door. The last flicker of light disappeared as the door slammed shut behind me. The darkness swallowed me whole. I felt the cool air against my skin, a stark contrast to the stifling warmth of the cabin. My instinct was to turn back, to find the door and flee. But the whispers had returned, a chorus pulsating in sync with my racing heart. "Find us," they urged, drawing me further into the murky void. I took a cautious step forward, my feet feeling their way along the damp ground. My hands flailed, searching for something, anything, to cling to. Cool stone walls greeted my fingers, their surface rough and unwelcoming. I could hear the dark shifting, a whisper of movement that made my skin prickle. Then, before I knew it, a flicker of light cut through the darkness ahead. It pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing me closer. I dared to take another step, my breath hitching in my throat as I squinted to see what lay ahead. The whispers intensified, echoing off the walls, pulling me towards the source. As I approached, the light revealed a small room. It was circular, unlike anything in the cabin. Symbols adorned the walls, glowing faintly like they were alive. The air hummed with energy, tinged with familiarity. I felt a connection, an invisible thread linking me to the space. In the center stood a pedestal, and on it, an object drew my attention. A tarnished mirror. The glass was clouded but seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow. I stepped closer, mesmerized, shadows swirling at the edges of my vision. Suddenly a noise resonated behind me. A low, chilling growl echoed through the air, rattling my bones. I spun around, heart pounding as I scanned the darkness, but I was alone. Or so I thought. The whispers had turned into giggles, taunting and mischievous. "You shouldn't have come here," they warned, playful yet menacing. I turned back to the mirror, my breath quickening. Curiosity overcame fear as I reached out to touch it. The moment my fingers made contact, images swirled within the glass. Faces, places, moments long forgotten. But then, one face surfaced, vivid and clear. It was someone I knew. My heart sank as I recognized them. It was my brother, lost to me in a car accident years ago. He smiled, but there was something unsettling about the way his eyes locked onto mine, pleading yet filled with a darkness I couldn't place. The whispers escalated, caught between joy and despair. "Help us," they said, the demand resonating loudly. I stumbled back, shaken. This was not a request I could entertain. I wanted to rush back to the door, to shut it all away, but the thought of my brother's face lingered. I was torn between the urge to flee and the need to understand what was happening. That's when something shifted in the shadows behind me. I felt a presence, a weight in the air, and realized I was not alone anymore. My breath caught in my throat as a figure emerged, casting a long silhouette against the glowing symbols. I couldn't see their face, but I could feel their gaze boring into me. I was no longer just a spectator. Now I had to discover who was really waiting in the dark. I forced myself to breathe, every instinct screaming at me to run. The figure loomed closer, its outline becoming more distinct. It was tall and shadowy, but sharp edges hinted at an unyielding presence. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling in the cool air. There was silence for a moment, thick enough to slice through. Then, a whisper floated back to me, barely louder than the wind that rustled through the trees outside. "You must choose." The word sent a chill racing down my spine. Choose what? I darted my eyes around the room, searching for an escape. The mirror still glimmered, its surface restless with images and the soft glow that held me captive. My brother's face haunted me, but I didn't want to revisit that pain. "Let him go," I managed to say, half-heartedly hoping it would mean something. The figure remained silent but stepped closer, a sudden movement that knocked me off balance. I stumbled backward, the symbols on the walls shimmering with agitation. Across the room, the pedestal began to pulse with light, brighter than before, and the whispers crescendoed into a chaotic symphony. With my heart racing, I turned away from the figure, back toward the mirror. My reflection bounced back at me, but it was distorted. It looked like me, but darker. The eyes were hollow and fear clawed at me. "Don't!" I yelled at the reflection, thinking it might hold some power over me. The laughter from the shadows echoed more clearly now, cruel and mocking. I couldn't focus on anything with that presence looming behind me, its energy wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. Just then, the images in the mirror shifted again. My brother's face was gone, replaced by visions of the cabin, flashes of the woods outside, the trees whispering in the wind, and shadows slithering between the trunks. I saw a moment where he was there, alive, laughing, but it all twisted back to chaos. I caught a glimpse of a doorway, not the one I entered through, but something else, something hidden. "Help us!" The whispers pleaded again, this time layered with urgency. "The choice is yours." My heart raced. "What choice?" I yelled into the thick air. "What do you want from me?" But silence enveloped me once more. The figure behind me had drawn closer, and I could sense its breath on my neck, a cold, sweet chill that sent a jolt through my body. I turned to face it, fully prepared to confront whatever it was. What I saw made my breath hitch. Its face remained veiled in shadow, yet two glowing eyes pierced through the dark. They felt familiar, echoing my brother's plea. "You must decide. Save him or set him free." I froze. The weight of their stare felt like chains binding me in place. In that moment, I realized I had to act. The path to peace may lie within those dark choices. I took a step closer to the figure, the tremor in my hands replaced by determination. And that's when the ground beneath me began to crack, and the very shadows of the room twisted upward. "Make your choice now." The command was louder, resonating like thunder. I had to decide right then. My brother, or my own safety? But before I could reach an answer, everything exploded into darkness, too. When the darkness faded, I found myself standing in a corridor lined with heavy doors, each one shimmering faintly. I couldn't remember entering this place, but the air was thick with a sense of wrongness. The whispering from before faded to a distant echo, leaving me alone with the sound of my quickening heartbeat. I stumbled forward, my eyes darting from door to door. One had the faint glow of a familiar symbol etched on it, the sigil from the walls of the previous room. I pressed my hand against it. To my surprise, it clicked and swung open. I stepped inside, half expecting to find my brother. Instead, I stood in a small, dimly lit room filled with old photographs pinned to a corkboard. I recognized one picture instantly. It was my brother and me at the cabin, smiling, carefree. But the others were unsettling. Images of dilapidated buildings, shadowy figures lurking in corners, and landscapes twisted into nightmares. Each one felt like a piece of a puzzle I couldn't quite solve. Then, a soft sound caught my attention. It came from the far corner, where a figure sat hunched over. My heart raced. Was this my brother? I took a cautious step forward, calling out, "Is that you?" The figure slowly turned. I was met with a face I recognized, but one that was altered, haunted. It wasn't my brother. It was a version of him, eyes hollow and lost, a ghost of the person I once knew. "You shouldn't have come here," it whispered, its voice choked with despair. "Where are you?" I asked, shaking my head. "What happened to you?" "I tried to escape," it said. "The choice binds us. You must choose." A fresh wave of panic washed over me. The truth in its words stung. Whatever this place was, it held a power that twisted reality. "What do you mean?" I cried. "How do I set you free?" The figure pointed to a heavy oak door at the end of the room. "Inside lies the secret, but be prepared. Every choice has a price." Without thinking, I rushed toward the door, my heart pounding in my ears. As I opened it, an unbearable weight of darkness pressed in on me, and I felt as if shadows reached out to pull me in. I barely hesitated before stepping through. I found myself in a vast empty space that felt like the inside of a cavern. The air was thick and suffocating, and the silence felt deafening. I realized that this was a new realm, far removed from the cabin in the woods. Before me floated a shadowy figure, much like the being from before but more defined, holding what looked like a glowing orb. "The choice is not just about saving him," it said, its voice smooth yet chilling. "What do you desire most?" I opened my mouth to respond, but my mind raced. I wanted my brother back. I wanted safety. But there was also the nagging lure of the truth hidden in this realm. Every heartbeat echoed against the walls of my thoughts. Just then I noticed movement behind the figure. The shadows seemed to twist, revealing flashes of my brother's face, caught in moments of fear and despair. He was trapped. My heart sank. "I need to make a choice," I said, my voice just above a whisper. "What must I sacrifice?" The shadows around me deepened, and with sudden clarity I understood I was not just facing a choice, but a test of my very soul. Before I could grasp my feelings, wisps of darkness began to curl around my wrists, tugging me back. I felt the oppressive weight of two forces, a call to save my brother and an urge to escape this nightmare. Right then, as I struggled against my own instincts, a voice echoed from behind me, louder than any whisper. "Choose the truth. Only then will you be free." The words hung in the air, reverberating through the darkness. I had to make a choice, and I had to make it now. In that moment of paralyzing uncertainty, everything hinged on a single decision. The cacophony of voices clamored in my mind, but I knew I needed clarity. "Choose the truth," the voice implored again, its tone unwavering and demanding. With that piercing command resonating in my chest, I took a deep breath. I grasped the reality of my situation. The lengths I'd gone to understand what happened at the cabin, the voices I'd chased, and the shadows that moved at the edges of my existence. My brother was part of this maze, a figure tangled in it just like I was, and I couldn't set him free without facing the truth that awaited me. "Do I have to sacrifice something to save him?" I shouted, feeling desperate. The figure before me twisted slightly at my words, its orb flickering. "Every truth carries a cost," it replied, its voice smooth yet haunting. "You must decide what you are willing to let go of." In the dizzying swirl of thoughts and emotions, I envisioned everything I'd cared for. My brother's laughter, the rough warmth of friendship, my memories of carefree days. Then, I envisioned the darkness, the whispers of the cabin, the shadow lurking in the woods that had somehow entwined with my life. The impending danger felt monstrous, a weight that threatened to crush me. "I wish to free my brother," I said, the conviction growing in me like a flame. "If that means letting go of my own fear, then I'll do it." A shudder rippled through the air, and the glowing orb surged brighter in response. "Are you certain? For the choices you make here will echo through the fabric of your life." Before I could answer, shadows surged towards me, wrapping around my legs and pulling me to the ground. I felt a fire ignite within, an all-consuming resolve. I know that fear is holding me back. I will not let it control me. As I shouted those words, the darkness hesitated. The orb in front of me pulsed with a blinding light, illuminating the cavern. I could feel the ancient walls tremble, and with a roar, the shadows hesitated before swirling away as though flinching from the light. Then, in that visceral instant, I glimpsed my brother again. The figure before me spun away, revealing his form trapped within swirling shadows, wide eyes pleading. He was close yet so far. Every moment weighed heavy. "Let the truth free you both," the figure commanded, its voice merging with the very essence of the cavern. "Together," I cried out, making eye contact with my brother, my heart aching to bridge that gap. I stepped forward, letting go of every thread of fear, every ounce of doubt. I focused on the memories we shared, the love that had always tied us together. In a flash, the orb exploded into a cascading wave of ethereal light, bursting through the shadows. The cavern shivered and shifted, reality warped, and the world around me cracked and splintered like glass. I was free-falling through colors, memories, and phantoms, sensing my brother alongside me. And then, silence. I blinked against the bright, searing light, gasping as I landed on soft earth. The forest surrounded me, the trees whispering above. I looked around, disoriented, unsure if I was still dreaming. To my left, my heart leaped as I spotted him. My brother, standing in a beam of sunlight filtering through the branches. He looked real, flesh and blood, his smile wide but filled with something profound I couldn't name. I rushed forward, but he stepped back, eyes filled with warmth yet sorrow. "You did it," he said almost reverently. "You found the truth." "But what about that place?" I panted, looking back toward the shadows that enveloped the trees, catching wisps of darkness slipping out of view. "Is it really over?" His smile wavered, turning serious. "It's not about being over. You chose to confront what lies hidden, but many are still caught in cycles, wandering between worlds." The shadows shifted in the distance, pulsing as if waiting for someone to take the step I had just taken. A haunting reminder that not all shadows could be banished. A mere distraction, perhaps? Glancing at my brother once more, I felt an indescribable pull. The truth now understood, yet still entangled. "I won't forget," I said, the words unsaid hanging heavy in the air. "Will I be okay?" "You will be," he replied, but uncertainty clouded his expression. "But there's still much left to explore. Remember, truths are layers. Some will always linger." He began to fade, his outline becoming translucent, as if merging with the light. "Look for the lost," he said softly, his voice fading like a whisper on the breeze. "Not all journeys end in safety." And then he vanished, leaving me standing alone beneath the watchful trees. My heart raced. The cabin, the shadows, the whispers, they were all entangled in a web of truth, and while the immediate threat of darkness had lifted, I knew I hadn't escaped entirely. I took a trembling breath and turned away from the woods, each step resonating with the knowledge that I had faced something extraordinary. As I walked back toward civilization, I couldn't shake the feeling I would have to return to confront not just the cabin, but whatever awaited in the depths of the forest. Why? Because some truths could never be fully uncovered, and echoes of the past could always find their way back.